Ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to the next session. My colleagues are just putting out the requisite number of chairs, so let me quickly introduce the topic of the next session. Really, we're going to be taking up the baton from where Daniel and Anne and Enrico left off, and we're going to be talking about Europe's ambition to be a geopolitical player and how that relates to the EU enlargement project and neighborhood policy. Back in 1995, when I began working at The Economist as an Eastern Europe analyst, enlargement actually was a sexy topic, as to use Enrico's phrase earlier. It symbolized EU dynamism, its ambition. 30 years later, it's not a sexy topic, despite the geopolitical imperatives behind the idea of enlargement following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So let me now introduce all my speakers for the very distinguished panel of speakers that we have. Ahmet Davutoglu, former Prime Minister of Turkey, welcome, sir. Boris Tadic, former President of Serbia, welcome and have a seat. Welcome. Robert Habeck, former Vice Chancellor of Germany, welcome. Tassos Hatzivassiliou, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Greece, welcome. Alona Shkrum, First Deputy Minister for Development of Communities and Territories of Ukraine. Anna Diamantopoulou, President of the Network for Reform in Greece and Europe and former European Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Equal Opportunities. So welcome all of you. We've got 50 minutes now before we break for coffee. And so there's lots of questions that I have for you afterwards, so I'm going to ask you to be disciplined in your opening statements. So let me start with you, Mr. Davutoglu. I guess the question, my first question to you is what sort of relationship and cooperation is possible between Turkey and the EU, as long as Turkey maintains the independent and multifocal international role that you have always advocated in your writings? I guess that's the big question.
Thank you very much. Of course, Turkish geopolitical location necessitates a multidimensional foreign policy. That has been my argument when I was in academic life and in political life. If you look at geopolitics today, what we are talking, I came from Turkey. Yeah. Now there is a NATO summit in Ankara, and they feature the most critical, one of the most critical summits in NATO history because of the gap between EU, Europe in general, and US. Yesterday when I was listening President Trump in press conference with President Erdogan, he was saying that there is an ocean between us and Europe. This ocean is not just a geographical terminology. This is difference of opinion, difference of strategy. First of all, Turkey as a member of NATO and Turkey as future member, I hope, of EU is a bridge in that sense between NATO and EU. If EU one day wants to be a strategic player, how can it be achieved this? EU today, even between EU and Europe, there is a difference. Because EU does not include all European countries. After Brexit, this question is also much more valid than before. Britain, Norway, Turkey, three most important countries of NATO are not members of EU. They are not in EU consultation processes. If EU wants to be as a global player in strategic wise, they have to find a way out. First, how to integrate non-EU NATO members like Britain, Turkey, Norway into their strategy, then also to have a strategic vision how EU can be again a hope for Balkan countries, for Eastern European countries. This is the basic challenge. If today, assume that imagine the map, what are we talking? Where are the geopolitical flashpoints? I can say from Baltics to Black Sea to Caspian Sea to Gulf, one wing. And the other one is from Baltics to Eastern Europe, to Eastern Mediterranean, to Red Sea, and to Gulf. So today we are talking on Ukrainian crisis in the first geopolitical zone. We are talking on Iranian question between Caspian Sea and Gulf. And also we have many critical issues, including Palestine, Somalia, Sudan in the next. So all the great players, Russia, China, US, they have some sort of a strategy towards this region. China wants to be the one road, one belt corridor through all these. And China has been very surprisingly quite active in Gaza issue, inviting all Palestinian leaders to Beijing. Also very effective in Gulf. Similarly, Russia is trying to restore its influence there. US is already in the region as a part of a war. Where is EU? This is the question. What is EU's strategic vision for the future? When I was negotiating with European partners, I was always saying, without Turkey, EU cannot be a real global strategic power. Because of Turkish location, in between, in the center of all these world events, we have Turkey. And Turkey does not have any even consultative mechanism with EU. So the question is, does EU really want to be a global player? If EU wants to be a global player, if EU wants to be an influential player in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in Black Sea, Caspian Sea, Gulf, Turkey is the only bridge, the only key, the only element for such a strategic player. Yesterday, when Trump landed to Ankara, Macron was in Damascus. How can anybody say today that EU can have a strategic vision towards Syria without consulting Turkey? Can the EU do it? Because Turkey has paid the price during civil war. Millions of refugees came to Turkey. I personally was blamed because of my approach towards Syrian people to help them. And now it is time to see the results. And suddenly, without paying any price, EU wants to be in Middle East. EU wants to be everywhere. Just to conclude, one very short and clear sentence. Without Turkey's membership or strategic coordination, EU cannot have a global strategy. And without European values to be respected, Turkey cannot be a global player. We have to defend European values, yes, adopt European values, but Europe itself should adopt European values. How can European countries support Netanyahu when there has been a genocide in Gaza? This is the question mark. So Europe has to restore itself. Turkey has to make a new assessment regarding EU. And thanks, I have my dear friend Boris Tadic here. We have to have a regional ownership in Balkans. Regional ownership means Turkey, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Serbia. We had trilateral process with President Tadic. So with all these parameters, together Turkey and Europe can be global players. Without each of them, none of them can be global players.
Well, thank you very much. We'll come back to that question of also Turkey's role in the Western Balkans and how that fits in with the EU's strategy in the region too. But moving on to Mr. Tadic. Serbia is obviously a much smaller country than Turkey, very much smaller, but it has also pursued an independent and multi-vector foreign policy. Indeed, as president of Serbia, you adopted the 4 pillars foreign policy back in 2009, as I recall. And that was aimed at balancing partnerships between the EU, the US, Russia, and China. Is that still an appropriate policy today? And is it an obstacle to Serbia's EU membership? Just by way of an introduction.
I did it, I was introducing 4 pillars policy because of thinking about my country. Because whenever we've been fulfilling all conditions in terms of our negotiations with the European Union, my European friends has been imposing new standards and new conditions. And that was a problem of trusting. In that moment, I used to be president of Serbia. I was caring about my country. That was my duty. And the new president is continuing that policy in a different way. But coming back to what Ahmed has been explaining right now, I fully agree with you. This is a strategic issue, but I think that whatever you said is not very easy to be digested by European leaders right now. I mean that European leaders are not able to digest the importance of Turkey, the importance of geostrategy, because being too long, subdominant, under influence of United States. Many, many decades. And European leaders and the political thinkers weren't able to think about geostrategy. After what happened with Ukraine, after what happened with Greenland, I fully agree with my friend Enrico Letta, European Union is waking up. I don't know about European political thinkers, because Europe is squeezed between 2 main forces without being able to think about the role of European Union in global arena. Without the enlargement process, you cannot be global competitor. Without enlargement process, not only in terms of market, economy, technology, but also geostrategy, borders, inter-civilization dialogue, Islam and Christianity, defense sector, technology, you cannot be a global player. All European countries are small. Even Turkey is small, 100 million people. My country is 7 million people. We are the biggest country in the region, but we are so small. The European Union is small in terms of scale, in terms of capacity to be competitor on global market with China, United States. I have to add, India is going to be global power in the next few years. In that context, if European leaders, European thinkers, European companies, and the business leaders are not going to be able to understand how the world is going to look like in 10 and 20 years, European Union is going to lose this game. This is a problem. In terms of Serbia, as a leader of Serbia who was mostly pro-European, having good relations not only with the 4 pillars, but also with the Turkey, which we consider very important for our region, and influence of Turkey is crucially important in the Western Balkans. I wanted to create a reconciliation atmosphere, to have a dialogue in the region. After war, what happened in the former Yugoslavia, apologizing for the victims, going ahead towards European integrations, but I didn't see European leaders who understood that the geostrategy and importance, not only for us, but for themselves. Right now, we are living in a totally different world. Germany is not anymore crucial power in Europe like it was during the Merkel period. Germany is losing capacity to be competitive partner and a player in the global arena right now because of problem with the energy, because of changing attitudes to energy issue, because of problem with the Ukraine, with the Russia right now. Germany was focused on Russia as an energy partner, strategic partner in the past. Right now, this is not the case anymore. And I'm finishing with that. But I cannot understand strategy in which, in the next 10 years, you understand, I'm talking on behalf of European leaders, I'm trying to understand their philosophy. I see their approach to the Ukraine war. I'm on the Ukrainian side in this war, totally. But we have to find a solution with Russia. If we don't have a solution in the next 10 years with Russia, 5 years with Russia, we are going to create big and extremely dangerous enemy. Strategy in which you are creating your enemy, even more dangerous than today, pushing them in the hands of China. This is not very rational politics right now. I think that European leaders has to think how to deal with the Russia in next 5 and 10 years to avoid the geostrategical situation that on the border with Europe is going to be extremely dangerous nuclear power enemy of Russia. This is a very important issue right now, and this is a strategic issue that I'm going to raise during this discussion.
Thank you, and thank you for sticking within the time. Well, this is the beauty of this forum that Nectaria has created, this economist event that we bring together people to bring a completely different perspective to the discussion and to open up the discussion in that way. So thanks very much to both of you for doing that. So now I come to you, Mr. Habeck. So yeah, different perspectives, but there also seem to be very different perspectives within the EU itself about this topic of enlargement. There seems to be even dissension within the bloc about the purpose of this tool. Is it a geopolitical tool to persuade countries to break with competitors or rival powers such as Russia or China and come closer to Europe, or is it something else? Today, I believe that the European Commission's proposal to introduce a new cluster of negotiations for Serbia, whose accession negotiations have been stalled basically for 5 years, is going to be probably vetoed by the Netherlands, partly because Serbia has not imposed sanctions on Russia, but also because of other concerns about corruption and so on. So can you enlighten us about the different approaches between the Commission and the Member States, between the Member States themselves, particularly the leading Member States, as we used to call them, Germany and France and Netherlands and so on? It would be good to hear that. Well, and of course, respond to anything you've heard so far.
Yeah, so enlightenment would be, that's too much to ask for me. But maybe I can structure a little bit the debate and come to some conclusions from my point of view. First of all, there are a lot of important topics now on the table. NATO, yes, sorry.
I think you have to
NATO,
face the front.
NATO and is NATO, how's the shape of NATO? And my point would be that NATO is not prepared for the situation like this, as maybe the European Union was not. The relationship to Russia, of course, my lesson learned is, and this is also an important issue, but this is would be a next Congress, I guess, that Russia only understands the language of power, but this is to be debated. And then the European Union. And I think you're completely right in the description that there are two strategies in the European Union in contradiction when you leave it like it is. The first strategy or the first approach is that the European Union is a union of values, democracy, freedom, peace, and so on and so forth. So the inner integrity of the states is important to be a member and to organize the European Union. And this is kind of the European Union since the collapse of the Soviet Union in the last 30 years. And the second strategy is the strategy we discussed since Anne Applebaum and Enrico Letta here. And this is the geostrategic role, the Greenland issue, the Ukraine war. And of course, there is a different approach to the world order, where when you want to be, when this is a time of a predator and you are a small, nice cat, well, you'll be eaten, as we heard before. And this has nothing to do with being on the higher moral stage or having the higher moral ground. This is pure power game. And these two strategies, the one that is really much as the foundation of the European Union and the actual one, are in contradiction. And there's no real way out when you come from one point or another. When you discuss it as black or white, then I think you have to combine it, and then you are in the middle, and this is gray. And the gray, from my point of view, is the question the European Union has now to ask itself: what kind of union does it want to be in the future? And forget about the past for a while. And then there are three, at least I would say, three possible options on the table. The first one is muddling through. So the thing we have done like the last 10, 15 years, whenever money is missing and we don't have the authority to gain some money, we find some money in some other pockets and we give it another name, and then it's not a debt and it's not guaranteed by Germany. So this is the way we're doing things in Europe, compromising it, doing compromise, but also compromising then the pure logic of the solution. The second one is reform itself. This is, I think, mainly about the inner structure of the European Union. So if the Western Balkan countries, including Serbia, will be members of the European Union, we can't go with a veto system and the unanimity system in foreign politics and fiscal politics. And I think it's not possible that every member state has a commissioner then. Then we have, 40 commissioners? So this is the inner reform structure. And the third one is maybe a little bit off the table, but listening to Enrico Letta and Anne Applebaum was in this way enlightened, talking about the finality of the European Union. So do we want to overcome this situation and doing a big leapfrog forward that the European Union becomes a real political powerhouse, which means, of course, that the three remaining issues that are not Europeanized, fiscal politics, foreign politics, and defense politics, in some way or another, as they are connected to geopolitics, become also part of the European Union. But then to make not a secret about it, I would say then we are talking about something like the United States of Europe in the end. Because fiscal politics, remember, no taxation without legislation, that's part of the national sovereignty, of course, foreign politics, and at least defense politics. So this is something big and maybe too big. What would be my answer? I would say it's always in the middle of these two. As a former politician, I would say I would have a pragmatic approach. I would say kind of between meddling through and reforms, we find a common ground, and in the next 2 years we do some reform steps. Now, from a little bit from outside of politics, I would say this is not enough. So between reforms and leapfrog forward, not that we have to write a constitution and say now we're the United States of Europe, but a little bit more ambition is necessary. And with that, then we can approach the other potential partners out of a position of strength, which might include Turkey in a cooperation economically, maybe militarily, but not that you are, of course, in the first moment part of the European Union. I think you don't want to in the moment now, but also Canada on the other side. But the status quo, this is my point, is not enough.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. Turning to you now, Deputy Minister. Of course, back in the day when the EU was the only game in town, as they used to say, in the Western Balkans, Greece was a big advocate and mentor for countries in the Western Balkans. So, how do you see this now, just sticking with this question of the enlargement strategy and how that fits into the idea of the EU or its ambition to be a geopolitical player? Is it going well?
First of all, we have to admit that we're living in turbulent times and in a volatile region. That means that we need to shape with our today's decision the developments for the future. Let's start from Ukraine and Moldova first, John, because, you know, we really support the European vocation of those two countries. As a Deputy Foreign Minister, I had the chance to visit 3 times Kyiv and Chisinau to send a strong message of solidarity on behalf of the Greek government to their European vocation. But yes, let's focus on the Western Balkans. As Foreign Minister Gerapetritis has already stressed, we truly believe that the Western Balkans, geopolitically, financially, and geographically belong to the European family. And this is why Greece, and I think that it's a common stance that represents all the political parties, really supports the European future of our Balkan neighbors. We started with the agenda of Thessaloniki in 2003. Then we had in 2023 the Athens Declaration, which were concrete texts that really supported their European vocation. So, as you know, Greece is assuming the presidency of the European Union in the second half of 2027. Therefore, during our presidency, it will be one of our top priorities to support and, let's say, help our Balkan neighbors to come closer to the European Union. Why not? We would be very happy during the Greek presidency of the European Council to welcome at least one new member state to the European family. I think that it's not easy, but it's not difficult at the same time. It depends on their progress and on the grade of their alignment with the criteria set by the European Union. And why should we work for the Western Balkans? Because we think that their integration is a strategic necessity for the sake of the region and of the European Union itself. It's not about security, it's not about prosperity, it's not about progress. It's also about, let's say, a common future. And I have to be clear. In the previous decades, the European leaders and the European Union had turned a blind eye on the Western Balkan societies. Therefore, I think that there was a small gap that was filled by some revisionist players outside the European continent. And I think that we have to confess that we almost lost one generation of young people that wanted to follow a European future, that they were lasting for a European vocation. I'm happy that this thing is totally different now. During the last decade, the European Union herself has decided to accelerate the process of the Western Balkans. So we have, let's say, a specific path. We have a lot of criteria to be met, and I'm optimistic that our neighbors will be able to fulfill them in due time. Apart from that, there is also another priority that is being linked with the Western Balkans, is the energy issue. You know that after the unacceptable invasion of Russia against Ukraine, things have changed. So now we are ready to draw a new energy map in the European continent. You know that Greece plays a pivotal role towards that direction with a lot of players like the US, for example. We have, you know, a lot of cooperation towards that direction. Therefore, I think that the integration of the Western Balkan societies to the European architecture of energy will be beneficial to all of us. We have a lot of infrastructure that are important. I'm talking about the transatlantic pipeline, about the connector between Greece and Bulgaria or between Greece and North Macedonia. And we have, of course, the vertical gas corridor, which is, let's say, the epitome of the energy future we all want. Greece is ready to help its Balkan and European neighbors by sending them LNG through the vertical gas corridor from Alexandroupolis. We could send gas, and we already do that, to Ukraine, Moldova, of course, Bulgaria, Romania, eastbound, and why not Slovakia, Hungary, westbound. That means that Greece is a pillar of stability, and we prove every day that we are here in order to support our friends and our neighbors in order to bring them closer to the European Union, as long as they always accept our common European values as we describe them as the European way of life.
Thank you very much indeed. So let's turn to Ukraine. Welcome, Alona. So Ukraine is now joined what is already quite a crowded waiting room of the aspirant countries, the candidate countries wanting to join the EU. So it would just be good to hear your perspective now as one of those in the waiting room outside. How are things going in terms of the negotiations and preparations? And maybe you want to comment on what Mr. Tadic also said about the EU and Russia, which I understood to be the point being made was that, I guess, looking over the longer term, the question is how do we have security in Europe as long as we have a revanchist and resentful, Russia outside of it. But of course, future relations depend very much on what happens with regard to Ukraine and the defense of Ukraine's sovereignty, which I know Serbia's official position is to support. So, yeah, maybe just to respond also to these points.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jan. It's an honor to be here. It's a very interesting discussion, and I think it's very timely to talk about not just how the EU accession could play, but why do we need it, and what kind of Europe do we want? And I think all of the previous speakers actually started it with the question of, what is the EU strategic vision for the future? It's not just accession for the accession or enlargement for the sake of enlargement. There is no point in that, not for us, not I think for all of the member states. What kind of union EU wants to be? Are we up to the challenges? And I say us because I think that Ukraine is a part of EU. It's just a process, as you said. We don't want to be in the waiting room. We want to be actually a beneficiary partner to a lot of challenges that the world is facing, not just the EU. You started this discussion, Joanne, from saying that EU accession is not a sexy topic anymore. I think this is very true. The fact is that the sexy topics are basically here at the title of the annual government roundtable from The Economist is, growth, technology, resilience, the challenges, the AI, the new possibilities. And Anne Applebaum here on stage, I think, did a perfect kind of provocation for the discussion, citing the book The Hour of Predator, where the book actually says that the old liberal rule-based order is collapsing completely, and there is this breed of predators like autocrats, dictators, new tech billionaires who are, who know nothing about the rules, who don't want to talk about the rules, and it's either the predator who wins or somebody who loses. I actually think that this is definitely not, how the Europe was built, and not the future that we want to build. I think that this could be a very different thing from the zero-sum game to a win-win, because Europe was always a coalition. It was always taking best practices and best possibilities from different countries, and it was always built in challenging times. It was never easy, probably. So I still think, and maybe I'm an idealist in this way, that there is a lot of things that we could provide for Europe as Ukraine, as a country in war with enormous amount of experience in resilience, in technology, in protection, in AI, in drones, and in a lot of other things. And that obviously we need from European countries, and a lot of countries could provide the share. My colleague from Greece said about the new energy system. Things have changed, you said. But I think they have changed not just in energy for sure, but they have changed also in infrastructure. They have changed a lot in understanding of the world order. They have changed a lot in diplomacy, in geopolitics. And Europe, is ready, I think, to face that, but not all of the countries are ready to face that. I will just cite you a number of cases from Ukraine. Russia has destroyed 3 million households in Ukraine, which is more than all of the houses in the country of Denmark, for example. Russia have destroyed during the past 4 years 4,000 kilometers of roads and infrastructure and bridges, which is basically the road from Kiev to Athens and back, right? And if you talk about the ports, we have had sirens for the past year in the ports for 1 month. So for 1 month, the ports could not operate normally because of the sirens and the drones attacks. In any other circumstances, that would mean that the country is collapsing and there is no economy, there is no growth, there is no possibilities. It's the total war, it's the total destruction. And Ukraine is still not just not collapsing, but actually showing economic growth in parts of the country, doing the exports of grain and doing the exports through the Black Sea ports more than we did before the war, with the help of the partners, with the help of a lot of IFIs and coalitions, but we are doing that notwithstanding the drones attacks, the military difficulties, the difficult logistics, the disruption, the people who left, but the people who stay are actually incredible in resilience. So we have this technology of protection, we have this technology of working in very difficult circumstances. I've just been to the conference in Brussels, which was the preparedness conference of the Commissioner Labib, right, for the civilian protection. And there was a CEO of the port of Antwerp, Bruges, in the panel. And he was asked a question, is the port ready for a drone, flying in? And he said no. And they are learning from our Black Sea ports how to operate with, when one drone comes and the drone costs $1,000 and the complete port and millions of dollars, billions of dollars stop operating. So I actually think that we have this experience and we can help EU build the stronger outcomes and the stronger vision, not just through economy, through energy, through new technologies, but through this new resilience and this new expertise that unfortunately I think will come very, very handy, not just for countries such as Finland or the Baltic states, but also unfortunately for all of the countries here, for Greece and for everyone else. And I think this is about the vision for the future, about the win-win, about taking the best practices from each other and learning the best things. We're also doing right now the AI technology of protection, how to protect the critical infrastructure with AI, with the people, with the best resilience protocols. And this is what we are bringing to the table, not to the waiting room, but to the table. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much indeed. And final speaker, Anna. Just like to hear your perspective on this, the kind of central issue that we've been debating so far in the panel in terms of how the enlargement strategy fits into the EU's geostrategic ambition. Is it going well in your opinion? What should be done?
Thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation. Let's start with the question you put in the beginning. Is enlargement a sexy issue? No, it is not. It is important. It is urgent. Yes, it is. Is it easy? Not at all. And I think that we have, particularly in this panel, we have to see the enlargement from three different perspectives. The perspective of the candidate countries, and that means we have to see what the governments do in order to join the European Union, what is the public opinion in these countries, and who has created this public opinion, and what the political system has done for that. And of course, the business community and the academic community. The second perspective is from the member states. The same questions. What the governments do? What is the public opinion for the time being? And do the governments work on the enlargement issue with their public opinion and the public systems, or they do exactly the opposite? Because if we see the Eurobarometer, we see that there is a big problem with the enlargement concerning the public opinion. And I think we have to put it in the real questions and the real answers. And the third perspective is through the European institutions and how the European institutions are preparing themselves and what does it mean. Being a commissioner, I would like to see from this culture of a commissioner who does not have a particular country, what will be the next day? What will be the future of the European Union after the enlargement? So I would like it in this few minutes to make 5 points. The first one, we speak about the strategy, about the geopolitical importance of employment. You spoke about the lack of strategic thought of the leaders of Europe. Yes, but in the European Union, it is not only the geopolitical strategy. It is equally important democracy. It is equally important the welfare state. It is equally important things that it is not only the geopolitical strategy. Yes, it is important, but it is not only that. Speak with the Germans. What is the situation now, or with the French, or with the Greeks? So the first point is that Europe, yes, has to be a superpower, but it is a different superpower than the United States and than China, because here, power and law go together. It is not only power. Law, which means democracy, democratic institutions, respect of human rights, of minorities. It is very crucial issues for the governments and for the people. The second issue is this influence. Does EU exercise influence? Yes, but in a different way than the other superpowers. Because European Union, let us not think from Europe of the past, the European Union does not exercise influence through influence spheres, as was the situation in the past, and it becomes again the same. It exercises influence through the enlargement procedure and the neighborhood procedure. And what is the difference? The difference is that it is not just deals. I'll give you planes and you give me a basis, or deals, commerce deals. The enlargement procedures means that we invite, the European Union invite the candidate countries to be equal parts in a union of rules, of rights, of responsibilities. And this is not easy. And of course, the third issue is that enlargement is a condition of stability for the European Union, because if there is no enlargement, we know that there are vacuums in the whole area, and these vacuums will be filled by other powers. And we have to accelerate, and here we have huge delays, and we have to apologize to these people, but we cannot speak only for acceleration without taking into account that we cannot lower our standards. We didn't speak about Copenhagen criteria. It is not a bureaucracy, Copenhagen criteria. It is the essence of what these countries, the candidate countries, want to join. The fourth issue is that enlargement requires deepening. We are now 28, 27 countries. If we become 35 countries, we cannot continue with the rules and with the procedures we have now. We know it very well. We have to change our system in order to be a bigger Europe. And what does it mean? We cannot change we know that we cannot change the treaties, but we can find a way. We can use enhanced cooperation. And with enhanced cooperation, we can proceed with the enlargement, with new enlargement. But we are not ready, I'm afraid, to do that. And here, my final comment is that, of course, in order to proceed with the enlargement, we need a new architecture, a new security architecture in Europe, and we have to discuss it with our candidate countries. And this is one of the most important things. Final sentence. Europe cannot be just bigger. It has to be bigger and stronger and capable without losing what it is proud of, and it is its democracy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. So we've got about 10 minutes, and I do want to, it's going to be quick-fire questions and quick-fire answers now to all of you. I mean, just throwing one question out, picking up what Anna just said, and you emphasized, that the process is important and meeting the criteria, the accession criteria and so on is important. But ultimately, the enlargement decisions, and it's always been political at the end of the day. I know there's this tension, this contradiction all the time. And like we're seeing it today with the Serbia example. So the cluster that the European Commission is saying that should be opened for Serbia pertains to cross-border services with the EU single market, where probably over the past 2 years, Serbia has done enough in terms of reforms to open that cluster of negotiations. But it is going to be vetoed on other criteria, on political criteria that is to do with Serbia's failure, I suppose, to comply with the common foreign and security policy on sanctions and so on, and maybe corruption concerns and so on. So it's a political decision is now blocking. So the veto is blocking it. So, that has consequences, obviously, in the countries. That's just something to throw out. But I'm going to turn to each of you and ask questions. So, Mr. Davutoglu, you castigated the EU for lacking a kind of geostrategic vision with regard both to Turkey and to enlargement more generally. I guess it takes two to tango, so it does beg the question, how serious is Turkey about this relationship, and what is a realistic framework for cooperation today? That's my first question. I've got a follow-up, so it has to be very, very quick.
Yeah, just to respond to Anna's conclusion, yes. What is the uniqueness of Europe? Whenever I am negotiating with a counterpart, I was trying to think from the perspective of the counterpart rather than my perspective. The uniqueness of Europe is development strategy within democracy compared to other countries. But here there should be a real self-criticism of Europe, not regarding the candidate countries. What about Europe in itself, about European values? The trends in basic European countries today is not towards democracy. More authoritarian tendencies are around. I don't want to give many examples, Britain, France, Germany. So the first assessment should be self-assessment. Coming to us, yes, we have to make self-assessment. I was very much in favor of European integration, and the last most comprehensive agreement was signed by us, Merkel, and many other leaders, 2016. Now, therefore, in my country, I am criticizing our position as well regarding corruption, regarding lack of some democratic values, etc. But if we want to join, strategy does not mean geopolitics. Strategic vision means values you are defending. Strategic vision means institutions you are working with. Strategic mindset means a global future vision for it. Today, I agree with Boris that what I said is not quite easy to be digested by European leaders. But at the same time, if you do not, if they don't digest these realities on the ground, history will digest EU. So today, EU lost competitiveness, EU lost its own values, and from our side, therefore I said we have to make also a new assessment. Without compromising about our multidimensional foreign policy on Ukraine-Russia issue, Turkey acted very wisely. In Balkans, with Serbia, despite of some prejudices, we acted very wisely on regional ownership. If Europe makes a mistake, thinking that Turkey has a strong military and defense industry, let's use Turkey for that purpose, forget the rest, like visa liberalization, economic issues, that is misleading. Turkey will never accept. I am not in an official position today, but Turkey will accept only a very dignified, equal relations if our commodities can go to European market, our people, businessmen should go as well. Visa liberalization is a must. Without that, nobody can convince Turkey to be part of the attractiveness of Turkey of EU for Turkey is visa liberalization and strategic assets together. I think we need each other. Both sides should make a new assessment to each other.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've got less than 5 minutes, and we do have to go to a coffee break. But a great start to a discussion, which we're going to continue tomorrow, as you know, as well, when we're talking again about relations between Turkey, Greece, and the EU. Mr. Tadic, a few months ago, I think it was, Serbia's current president, Aleksandar Vučić, and the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama, put forward a proposal which was for an accelerated, phased accession for the EU candidate countries in the Western Balkans. And that envisaged integration gradually into the EU single market and the Schengen area, but foregoing veto rights and representation in EU institutions, including the European Parliament and European Commissioner and so on. Do you think that proposal has merit, given the enlargement deadlock?
I don't think.
Okay, so what's the way forward in your view?
I'm opposing President Vucic all my life, and those people that are running Serbia right now has been pure nationalists, in favor of war, killing other people. And right now, during my term, they change attitude, and I don't trust them. Second, I think that approach can maybe make easier way towards kind of integration. But to be second-level country of member state country, I think this is totally unacceptable for Turkey, for Serbia, for every single country. And this is the question. This is what I think. But a lot of things we opened right now. We don't have enough time to discuss those important issues. But I was asking you and whole crowd to think about what we are going to do with Russia in the future. But at the same time, to explain reality. In Serbia nowadays, we have a 35% of people that are supporting European integrations. During my term, 70%. Serbia is rhetorically on the path towards European Union. But at the same time, Serbian people are not very enthusiastic in that respect. Who is going to pay price? We are going to pay price if Serbia is not going to be integrated in the European Union. But also Europe is going to pay price because there is no empty space. Serbia is a small country, but very important, connected with all countries in the Western Balkans, in the Balkans. If Europe is not going to be there, some other players are going to be there. Yes. I'm always appealing on everyone in the European Union to understand the importance of geostrategy. If Europe is not going to be in Serbia, European Union and Balkans, Russia is going to be there. And we are going to have a second Kaliningrad on the European continent. This is a very dangerous situation geostrategically. This is why I'm putting in the context of security, geostrategy, Russia issue. But many times I've been witnessing that European leaders are not thinking in advance. They're coming to think about consequences and outcome too late. And right now, I've heard Enrico Letta who said, right now is a chance. Next time, we are going to lose chance. Maybe this game is over, but I hope this is not over right now.
Well, thank you for raising all these issues, which of course are going to, we'll be debating over the next 3 days and in subsequent panels today. So they're important issues, and we thank you for raising them, and no doubt we'll be discussing in the coffee break too. We're running out of time, but Mr. Hatzivassiliou, I just wanted to ask you about how you see EU-Turkey relations in the present geopolitical landscape, and what, in your view, would be the optimum framework for mutually beneficial cooperation today?
Well,
first you, and I will come to you.
Well, 3 years ago, the Turkish leadership has stressed that EU accession is a priority for Turkey, and Greece was among the first countries that welcomed such a statement. We have an adamant stance. We want a democratic Turkey, part of the European family, as long as Turkey respects the criteria. So these nice statements that our Turkish friends really want to join the European Union should be accompanied by concrete actions, and actions that would fulfill the criteria set by the European Union. I mean that they need to be fully aligned with the common foreign security policy. They have to respect good neighborly relations. They have to respect the sovereignty of the Republic of Cyprus, and they have to respect all the criteria, the convergence criteria, like the Copenhagen criteria that Anna Diamandopoulos said before, by all means. To be honest, and I'm speaking as a true and old friend of Turkey, I have lived in Turkey, I speak Turkish language, I'm an honest friend of our neighbors. I have to say that there is no big progress. We see backsliding in the rule of law, in democratic values, in human rights. This is why we always urge our Turkish friends to run and to try to fulfill the criteria set by the European Union. This is why the leaders have decided that we need a gradual, proportionate and reversible manner towards Turkey in order to be able to define the future of our relation. by all means, and I'm including because we have run out of time, we truly believe that Turkey should run closer to the European Union. We think that a strong democracy in Turkey and the European Turkey would be really important, not only to the EU, but to the Greek-Turkish relations themselves.
Okay, I'm giving, thank you so much, 10 seconds,
10 seconds just
on Cyprus.
about-
We'll come back to this in the
about
session tomorrow.
Cyprus issue and Turkish membership. If Greek Cypriots had accepted 2004 referendum, Annan referendum, today Cyprus would be recognized by Turkey, by all European countries, and there wouldn't be such a problem. The blame should go to Greek Cypriots who rejected these. Secondly, when Greek Cypriot side was accepted, it was violation of European values, rules, because Europe doesn't accept any country having territorial dispute. So it is better to talk more positive on this side, positive agenda rather than arguing to each other.
Okay, I can see we'll
Just
have no
10
coffee
seconds. Just
break.
10 seconds.
10
This
seconds.
is not argumentation,
Yes,
but
what have you
that's it.
started now?
You-
But come on, it's important, of course.
We have all to understand that Turkey occupies illegally 1/3 of the
No, it
Republic
is
of Cyprus.
according
Okay,
to,
okay.
At the
according
same
to,
time,
I am the
you
chair
know,
and,
just you have to know
No, no,
that
no.
the only
It is not
solution to the
occupation,
political
it is
problem
legal
of Cyprus
obligation for
could be
Turkey.
a bizonal, bicommunal federation, as we discussed in the UN framework.
point
This is
to
why
be
we're
made,
open to
and they
discuss
will-
it by all means.
Yeah.
We can
It
make
will
another forum for
continue.
that.
I'm going to give the last word because we have to finish for the coffee break. We'll come back to these issues, no doubt. But Robert, a final word just on,
Well,
I guess
now you see in practice how hard it is to.
you're in between.
No, I was trying to say, I mean, ideally, and I agree that should be true for the core European Union values, democracy, freedom, freedom of speech, individual freedom, and interest go together. Are we living in an ideal world? No. Therefore, I would say in pure logic of the European Union, it's wrong to open negotiations with Serbia from the interest of the European Union, because precisely what Boris Tadic has said, it's right. We need to prevent that Russia is moving in and maybe China is moving in and we have no say in this. So, and this is, and what my point is that the European Union is not in the structure and the infrastructure not prepared for foreign politics where this kind of interest actions are demanded. The only thing we are really good at offer is being part of it or being not part of it. And the room for maneuver is too small for the European Union right now. Therefore, we need inner reforms of the European Union, stronger European Union.
Well, we are the economists. We like lively discussions,
No, I have to say
and
a
we
word.
like.
We have to say a word in the end. Only word. Because I spoke as a European, now I speak as a Greek. If I could push a button and have all our region in Europe, I would be very happy because this is the geographical situation of Greece. But if we say that politically we decide that everybody enters the European Union, it means that the countries, the candidate countries, will do nothing in order to join and to implement the criteria. And we must not forget that we have a country which is occupied by Russia, and we have a country which is occupied by Turkey. We cannot forget that.
We are way over time. Nectaria is going to
There are
kill
many
me.
things
but,
to say about this, but this is not the platform. Turkish presence
We
in
have
Cyprus
to
is based on
end.
international law, not like Russia.
No, it's,
Okay.
it's an illegal invasion.
Okay,
No.
I
London-
declare the
You
session
have to accept the
closed.
reality.
I'm
Read
sorry,
London
Alona.
Agreement.
It's an invasion.
Read London Agreement.
Let's talk.
It's an
give the final
invasion
word
since
to Ukraine,
1974.
actually. Okay, enough now.
Colleagues, I actually think that, I think it's a great experience when there is a debate, but there is a common goal. And the question is Europe going to be relevant at all with these discussions in 20 or 30 years? I think we still don't realize that the world is changing completely. It's not just about Russia, it's not just about Iran, it's not just about drones, it's not just about China. It's where we are going to get stronger together. And then people will be enthusiastic, because you said, people in Serbia are not very enthusiastic. People inside Europe are not very enthusiastic about Europe anymore. People in Ukraine will not be enthusiastic about Europe if we are stuck in the waiting room for ages without the clear lines. The last thing I'm going to say, I was responsible myself for screening of the transport chapter, which is one of the most difficult chapters in Brussels. We did the fastest screening ever. We are doing the painful reforms in railway, separating the railway. No country ever did that in times of war. We are ready to do that. But we need, not just the waiting room from European member states. We need actually an understanding of the clear vision of Europe and us as members of Europe. And then people are becoming enthusiastic again. It is about the vision. It is about not just the slow process, but about the new realities.
Okay, thank you, Alona. And we've gone 10 minutes over into the coffee break. Sorry about that, but please join me in thanking all our panelists. Thank you very much.